Welcome to Inside Out Insights. We are uncovered here with David Corcoran. David, really pleased and honored to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to have you on here. We've known one another now for, I think it's like 4 years. Is it 4 years now? I think it is. Yeah.
2017. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we met one. Yeah, and we met one another through Toastmasters, which is an amazing organization. Just want to plug out Toastmasters to anyone who's listening into this, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, because I think when I joined, you were the area director, and then you became the division director. So you've given a lot to Toastmasters. So I want to thank you for that personally, David.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. I joined Toastmasters in 2015, and I'm originally Australian. I moved to Vienna. And basically, in that time, when we knew we could stay in Vienna, my wife had a job, she had income, and she had friends. I had no job, no income, no friends. And so I honestly joined Toastmasters as a way to connect with people, to find my own network, to establish myself in the communication area. And I had considered Toastmasters back in Australia. I'd actually contacted a couple of Sydney clubs, but they never responded to my email. And years ago, when I worked in business back in the early 2000s, I worked in Australia for a large supermarket, one of the major businesses of Australia. They had a public speaking club. And that was my first foray into that style of thing. It wasn't a Toastmasters club, but it was modeled on Toastmasters. And then, so when I got here, 2015, I thought, I've always wanted to do Toastmasters. And so, yeah, I joined. I very quickly went from secretary to president to area director when we met, then the first division director of Austria when we became our own part of Toastmasters. And for your viewers watching who have no idea, there are 14,000 clubs around the world, and pretty much any city you go to in the world, you could find a fellow Toastmaster. And the beauty of it is that I could come and visit you now in the UK and come to your local club, and it would feel just like you visiting again back in Vienna, where you could easily, fall in and understand how it all works. So yeah, it's really a blessing for those of you who are considering to increase your communication skills and your leadership skills. Toastmasters is a fabulous place to do that.
Yeah, it is, and I highly recommend it to everyone. It's a fantastic network, and yeah, not only is it how we met, it's how we met many other people, and it's also improved your own communication, your own leadership skills. And we're going to learn so much about communication and leadership in the next 45 minutes or so. It's going to be phenomenal. So I'll introduce you now. So David, you're an executive voice coach. You hail from Australia, and you moved to Vienna in January 2015 with your family. And in Australia, you're a professional opera singer performing with Opera Austria at the Sydney Opera House. So it was in 2015 you moved with your family to Vienna to be a trainer of communication skills, and now you still sing with various organizations in Vienna whilst helping your family thrive in the new city as husband and father, two of your most important roles. So you combine your skills in voice, public speaking, emotional intelligence, coaching, just to name a few of them, to help people improve themselves. You're passionate about personal development and encouraging others to be better versions of themselves to take responsibility for communication. You're, amongst other things, a lecturer of body language at the FH Wien Business School. You collaborate with MHC Business Language Training, the School, the Sprechens, and 6 Seconds. So we're probably going to cover a couple of those organizations as well. I mean, this is just a really impressive resume. It is really impressive. You've done a lot. Yeah, I've barely gotten through half of the intro. It feels like. You've established you established resonant personal development in March 2017 after you lived abroad in Vienna for 2 years, because you realize that people weren't taking full advantage of their voices, how they present, and access to the kind of things that they need in personal development. And the purpose behind resonant personal development is to help you discover your unique talents and purpose. You discovered your voice at 23 years old when you had your first singing lesson with John Lander, and it ignited that desire in you, not only to sing, but now 15 years later, share your insights, gifts, and inspiration and enthusiasm, so that other people can now develop their path and their career and their circumstances. So that is impressive. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, Alex. And it's clear you've had a look at my website, so that's very kind of you. I get a little bit of extra traffic there, which is nice. And yeah, I mean, really, when you think of all the different things that I do and have done, really what they all center on is your voice. And I honestly believe that the gift that I was handed at 23, as I mentioned, I'd been in that public speaking club for that big company. And it was at that point that I actually had that first singing lesson. It was a clairvoyant on my 23rd birthday when I went to get my palm read because all the ladies in the office were doing the same thing. And she said to me, "Have you ever wanted to use your voice, radio, acting, this kind of thing?" And if I'm quite honest with you, Alex, I wanted to go to Japan and learn karate because I've always been interested in martial arts. And so at the time I was working in this company, I wasn't really progressing in a career. I wasn't feeling satisfied. And I thought, why don't I go teach English and learn karate? And I was doing already taekwondo and hapkido in Melbourne, in Australia. And so when the clairvoyant said, "Hey, what about voice?" I said to myself, well, and I actually had the name of John Lander on my pinboard at home, and I hadn't acted on that. And so I thought, well, let's see if she's right. Why don't we try it out? So 2 weeks later, I had my first singing lesson, and it ignited a fire in me. And I basically spent 2 years in Melbourne under John's tutelage, learning how to sing. And then I was able to get into the Sydney Conservatorium of Music. I left my full-time work. I decided to go back to return to full-time study. It's where I met my wife. And then from there, progressed to Opera Australia at 26. So within 3 years, I transitioned from full-time employee of a major Australian organization to suddenly full-time employee of a major operatic company of Australia, Opera Australia, at the Sydney Opera House. So for me, it was not an easy journey, but really one of self-discovery, and then realizing that it's my voice. Now, and people say to me, well, I'm sure you always sound, or I've had many questions. Hey, has it always been your dream to be a singer? No, I wanted to be an organizational psychologist. So when I left school for uni, I studied psychology. And then I wanted to do business psychology, as I said. And I thought, well, who's going to believe me? I had no gray hair back then. So who's going to believe me as a young 25-year-old graduate? And that's why I was working for this major company to get some experience. I was in their market research department. I was seeing, different cross sections of the business, and had started some public speaking training and things with them there. But really, it's been an incredible journey just to realize that was the one thing that made me stand out. Living in Australia, I wasn't a sporting guy. I wasn't a natural athlete in certain things. I did a lot of sport, and I love sport, but I wasn't a standout AFL, Aussie Rules football guy. And so I found my path with opera and with singing. And now I still sing, and I still use my voice in my daily communication, and being able to help others now, as you said in the biog, to find their voice, to be able to resonate better with people. And that's why my business is called Resonant Personal Development. And it involves our emotions, our body language, our voice, our tone, our complete package, the person of who we are.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of something in one of the books that you mentioned to me in the 5 a.m. Club. Nothing is an accident. You're exactly where you need to be. And that's exactly what, again, you've done. I mean, it seems that there's nothing in your life was an accident, whether it was going to the clairvoyant, working in the supermarket, having the dream of being an organizational psychologist. All of these things have kind of come together to create the unique you. So what is it that we can do to become our unique selves in our day-to-day life?
So it's great that you mentioned the 5 a.m. Club. It was really one of those books that changed my life, in the sense that I remember you talking, for instance, about when we first met, that you had spent some 265 days journaling at that point. Maybe you've gone on longer now. And at that point, I just started my journaling journey. And it was because of the guidance in Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club, that I did that. He really talked about finding, or utilizing, I should say, the first part of your day for you. And so part of finding your own inner insights, what's inside you, is to think about, I love, there's a quote by Jim Carrey, who, and I'm probably going to misquote him now, but he says, what is it that you can provide that the world needs? That's all you have to figure out. What is it that you bring that the world needs and wants? And for me, it's my vocal skill. It's a natural talent. So often we feel like we've got to, discover our purpose, or we've got to do something and it'll suddenly appear. No, it's really a series of small little twists and turns. As you said before, I did this, I did that, I moved in here, I moved in there. I thought I was going to be this, but it turns out now that I help people in that way. And so it's really being open and aware, I think, of realizing, well, when we talk about public speaking, we think about, well, focus on your audience. What does my audience need? Now, my audience is not the people I'm speaking to. It's my friends, my family, my associates, my colleagues, the people around me, the people that come to me for something. So I've said to, I've done a bit of career coaching the last 12 months as well, moving in that direction, having had these 3 major career changes in my life. And I said to this person, hey, what do you love to talk about? So if we're at a party and I say, hey, tell me more about you, Alex. And then boom, what's that topic that you just could talk all night about? And then also, what problems do people come to you to solve? And this lady had a particular list. I'll give you a good example. So my wife is also a professional opera singer, the Wiener Staatsoper, and having a fantastic career and doing all sorts of major things. But we have 2 sons, and they're now, almost in their teenage years now. And the point being, though, that ladies, pregnant ladies especially, are always coming to my wife, asking questions. And so she is a problem solver. Now, there are many mothers out there, but she is a specific problem solver. There's something that people gravitate to her to solve that problem. And I said during the pandemic, hey, why don't you go and do some training in that area? And so she's become a hypnobirthing consultant, which is a form of meditation and breathing. Again, from the singing point of view, helps, but she's also had lived experience in this area and can help pregnant women and the fathers there as well, or the mothers or the co-parent with those techniques. And together as a couple, it's like a pre-birth, prenatal technique to help then when you go through the birthing process and become a family. So for her, it's an incredible problem-solving thing. For me, it's voice, or it's emotional intelligence, or it's presentation skills. How do I do this? How do I do that? So going to Toastmasters, I went for myself, as I said, to find some friends and see what connection could I see between singing and speaking. Because my teacher here, Sylvia Greenberg, had said to me, David, whether you speak or sing, it's all the same. It's the same mechanism, same apparatus. And so what you can do in one, you can do in the other. So when I started giving speeches at Toastmasters, I really thought, wow, I got the same feeling inside. It's that inside out idea, the same feeling inside me. When I sing, I get that feeling. When I coach people, I get that feeling. And then now when I'm a speaker or a communicator or a facilitator at uni, sharing something with an audience, even with you now, I get that feeling. So I'm tapped in to, it's not even flow. Maybe your viewers are familiar with flow. It's different from flow, but it's really tapping into just that energy, that excitement. It energizes me. I finish a call like this and I'm excited. I'm not, so for people thinking about, well, all well and good for you, think about what energizes you, what gives you, what you're easily good at. It doesn't take any effort. And sometimes we discount the ease of which some things happen for us as this can't be real because I haven't had to apply myself. We hear a lot of this hustle culture, grind and really push yourself to try and make something. But sometimes doors just open and you can just walk through. And I think that's probably the best thing to think about and utilizing in your daily routine by getting up at 5 a.m. I don't get up at 5 a.m. anymore, but I did it for 110 days straight. And, even when I had weddings the night before, or I had been to bed at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, I still got up at 5. I now get up at 6. But Robin talks about in the book, the first 90 minutes of your day are for you. Journal, meditate, reflect, exercise. So I have a whole routine of things. I do a little bit of listening to particular songs to uplift me and inspire me musically, to help me to set up my day in the best possible way.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, whether it's like setting up your day in the best possible way to your time as an opera singer, And there's so many questions now that are just buzzing through my head, and I want to ask if there's for everyone who's watching it, feel free to write your questions in the comments. Just write what you want to know from David, whether it's about your voice, whether it's about body language, emotional intelligence, or just any other topic as well. Just feel free to write your comments, write your questions, and we'll pick up some of them to answer. But a question that I have for you, because you were talking about living from the inside out. So what does that mean for you and for our viewers? What does it mean to live from the inside out?
Honestly, this is something that I've only come to in the last little while. So I belong to the Wellness Breakthrough Academy, which is in Australia, in Canberra, with Jason Irving as the main my main mentor, and his wife Anya Irving, and both of them, it's both spiritual and it's mentoring and it's a version of therapy and techniques that Jason and Anya deliver. And one of the key messages from them is that I am here as a spiritual being having an experience. And so part of the inside out is to say and give yourself that break to say, you know, in my life, I've been very achievement orientated and I've done a lot of things, as you said before. And I still probably will do a lot of things. But now I tap into, is this right for me? Is this direction right for me? That do I feel drawn to this? Is this where my talents lie? So I'm not trying to appease my family. I'm not trying to focus on the external factors, but the internal factors. So the inside out aspect for me is to say, does this feel right? There's gut reactions that we have in a situation. It doesn't feel right. You have to trust your gut. People have written books on that, the gut biome and the whole gut function that we have really are there, that give us messages. This is really the cornerstone of emotional intelligence with 6 seconds, is that emotions are messages. They're chemicals that your body takes in your environment for you to give you signals. It's data. So when we tune into that data, as well as then our rational thoughts and other things, then we can remain focused on, well, what am I feeling in this moment? How is this going for me? So I let those thoughts and feelings kind of come together, but I trust in the feeling much more than the thought, because my thought might want to talk me out of something that's actually really good for me. I'll give you an example that when I got out of singing, when I arrived here, I felt it was time to pursue these other things that I've been doing. And I always thought I'll never be a singing teacher because I don't play piano. I played the trumpet at school, but I never played piano. And it held me back. Today, I just finished the fourth session, the final session of my first Find Your Voice workshop, all about singing, as a singing trainer, as your teacher. So I've had 6 people with me who signed up. It's been fabulous, and they're all fantastic. They've all learned and discovered their voice through singing. And this, for me, was this push for myself. Inside, I had to say, right, I do feel this spiritual need to share and do this, but part of me was saying, no, I could never be a teacher. I don't play piano. I don't have enough credibility. Who's going to believe me as a singing teacher or as someone who's focused on singing to help people? And so I got out of my comfort zone through Jason and Anya both saying, no, David, you've got to take that step. Send out that flyer. So like everybody else who faces anxiety and issues and maybe panic about a situation. So I sent my flyer out to those in my network who I've worked with, who's had people who've had an experience with me, and said, this is what I'm doing. And for 2 weeks, I had no replies. I had nothing. And so I started to think, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I'm stupid. This is not right. I told you, and you have those cycling thoughts around yourself. And then people rang. 1, 2. Oh, I thought, great. I've got 2 people coming. 3. Oh, a couple joined. 4, 5. A 6th person, some Toastmasters, some people from various parts. Hey, David, I've always wanted to learn more from you. Oh, okay. So then I had 6 people. I thought I better write this workshop now. And I spent a whole weekend. I produced a 50-page booklet. I put my thoughts, my ideas, my efforts, my heart and soul into this program. And today everyone said, we want more. Give us more. Where do we sign up for the next bit? So I hope that this might be that step for me into saying, right, I'm a teacher and I can teach singing and I don't have to play piano to do that.
Wow. I mean, yeah, that's an amazing story. And that's the thing, you're just a fantastic storyteller. I mean, it was something that I also loved about the 5 a.m. Club is that Robert Sharma's a fantastic storyteller. You're a fantastic storyteller. And storytelling is at the heart of everything we do, just whether it's unpacking those stories about, what you were, again, thinking and then going through the gut instinct, or, again, those like cyclic thoughts going on in your head. Like, what if no one signs up? I have the same thing with the podcast. Like, what if no one's listening? What if no one leaves a comment on there? What if no one's liking it apart from my mother? And what if even my mother is disliking it? These kind of things that are going through my head. And it something you said earlier when I was talking about the inside out reminded me of a quote. We're not just human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we ignore either of those facts at our peril. So there's so much to unpack there. And you've made a lot of career changes in your entire life. You've made those scary leaps. I'm sure that there's a lot of wisdom you have that can help people, but one of the most interesting ones is that transition from opera singer to personal development. So how did you make that transition from like singing the opera to helping people, to coaching people, to being a teacher of personal development?
Well, it actually started concurrently. So when I was with Opera Australia, there's highs and there's lows. And I went through a low. And I sat with a very dear friend, Eddie. And Eddie loves Facebook, so I hope he might watch this at some point. A big shout out to Eddie, who's an amazing friend. And he sat with me in that moment of low. And he said to me, and I said to him, look, I need to do something else. I need to find a different way, because I'm not prepared to have somebody else control my career and my destiny. And that's often what happens in opera. The leaders of companies have to make business decisions, and sometimes those have ramifications for you. And so that's when I said, I like doing what we're doing. And we were kind of just informally coaching each other. He said, well, this is coaching. Why don't you go and be a coach? So in 2013, I found an ICF approved coaching course in Australia. And it was one of those moments, again, I've had so many green lights in life. I call them synchronicities. And it was one of those moments where I had holidays from Opera Australia. And guess when the course began? In the holidays. And it worked out to be affordable. It worked out that it was in Sydney, where I was living. It worked out that I could do the rest of it online. It could take 2 years to do it. It worked out it was ICF approved. So basically in 2013 and 14, before we moved to Vienna in 15, I completed my coaching diploma. I worked outside of the opera hours and completed the work that was necessary. I met some people there I'm still in touch with. And that was where, in my first coaching, in fact, someone said to me, well, what do you want? What are you doing? What do you want to do? And I said, I want to speak to inspire. And it's on my tagline of my emails now, if you've seen. And it just blurted itself out of my mouth. It was like a moment of channeling something more spiritual. And I said, I just want to speak to inspire. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I had no concrete plans to leave opera at that time. But when we moved to Vienna, my wife had this important career move, and I wanted to support her and support our family. And for the first 6 months, in fact, because of our visa situation, I wasn't allowed to work. So I had singing lessons. I did various things. I did some concerts. And then when we knew we could stay, I thought that I want to upskill. I want to use this time to do other things. And I was already a communications language trainer with MHC, who I'm still with, the Language Institute and Communication Training Organization. And I also then did my master's in human resources, because in Austria, everyone loves a title, and I didn't have a title. And I thought at that point, well, let's start to draw the coaching with the voice, and what else can I do here, and how can I then move into this area? And books by Robin Sharma, by James Redfield, by Tony Robbins. I do a lot of reading. I've always read personal development books. And so at the time I had this whole life of personal development, and over here this life of opera and what I've done. And then I thought, well, how can I combine them? And that's when in 2016 I attended a course with 6 Seconds, and the CEO of the course, Joshua Friedman, was leading the course. And in fact, he's written a couple of books, one of which I've got here. and I want to share this with your viewers because for me it's important. I went to the course with an open heart. I went to the course hoping to learn about emotional intelligence, but I learned a hell of a lot more. So in the front of the book, you can't really see with my camera, but Joshua signed it. And he wrote, David, it's been a great pleasure to work with you this week, and I'm delighted that you've joined the 6 Seconds community with resonance, clarity, and authentic voice to enliven this work. And I came home, resonance. And then I met another fellow that weekend who said to me, he'd been in a random meeting with someone. I was in a Heuriger through people, and this fellow had worked on Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the movie, as a dancer. He was an older man, and he'd been brought over. His wife had passed away, and the gentleman, a couple of guys had brought him over to sort of have a weekend away. And basically, he said to me, wow, your voice, it's so resonant. And I was like, resonant personal development. And I put it together that way. So I made the transition slowly in the sense of saying, well, I think I need to do this. My wife supported me there. I established myself, therefore, as this entity. And now, people come to me and I work with them privately, or I work in various places. It's a business name, but it's more about thinking about how can you and how do you resonate with other people. And that's something that's very individual. And so that's where you bring coaching with voice, with communication in English here in Vienna. That's a special thing, because a lot of Austrians want to internationalize and they want to have English and be really proficient in English as well. So I bring all those things together and say, well, yeah, let's do this. And so that's really how I made that transition. Opera is part of my story. Opera is something I still enjoy. I may one day go back to the opera. I don't know. When I left, I was a tenor, and with fresh teaching and new ideas, I realized that my voice is actually more of a high baritone, or maybe one day a Helden tenor, a Wagner tenor. And I had started to do some Wagner before I left Australia, and it felt really good. Again, how does it feel? When it feels good, you know it's right.
Yeah, I mean, when you feel good about something, then you know it's right. It's like your heart is in it. Whether that is within your voice, within your coaching, within helping people. Then this is the thing that I love about you is you just help people. You give, and I've seen you give at Toastmasters. You've given me a fair few car journeys to contests going around different places in Austria, so I'm very thankful for that. But you've also given me feedback and advice, and yeah, you just give a lot. But I want to know about the work that you give with 6 Seconds. So can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do with 6 Seconds?
Yeah, so I've been with them since that moment when Josh signed my book, and I had attended my first course with them. And I was, for the last few years, what's called a network leader. So every quarter they put out a new workshop, a 90-minute workshop, and you can deliver that content within your local community. We do it for free as volunteers. But they said to me back in February, look, would you join our European team? And I said, oh, wow, this would be great. And because very much a topic that I was interested in. And it's historically, when I was studying psychology at uni, it was Daniel Goleman's book that was really starting to have an effect with people. And so back then it was a bit pseudoscience. 25, 30 years on, 6 Seconds is actually the book quoted in the back of Daniel's book. He talks about social science. And that's 6 Seconds. They went on to found 6 Seconds, the people who had started that social science kind of technique back in the day. And so I'm the EQ business advisor for Europe, which means that I am now a liaison point for businesses in Europe who are interested in bringing emotional intelligence to their company, who want to be an EQ-friendly organization, and say that EQ is important. Emotions are important. And so what we do is we create ambassadors within the company. We offer training and certification like I've taken, and also in-house programs through our preferred partners and through our network leaders as well. So we're really a network Anyone can join the network as well. So if any of your viewers are interested, they could go to 6seconds.org, sign up. There's a lot of free material that they can look at, explore, and then talk to me and find out more. Of course, I can happily provide some information and other things as well. But what's in it for me on the inside is really that emotions are at the core of everything we do. When you sing, you have to have emotion. When you are Toastmastering, Alex, when we're in our moment delivering a speech, there has to be emotion. I've seen some really beautiful and raw and very emotional speeches from you. And I admired when I saw you live, I admired your ability to be vulnerable and to share in those moments. And it maybe, I don't know if it cost you anything, but certainly it enabled us as your audience to feel what you were feeling. When you go to the opera, my job is to make you feel something. I don't always have to feel the same thing, but I want you to feel something. And so it's all about feelings and emotions, and as we navigate careers, it's all about feelings and emotions. And so really, as I say, for me, it's just a topic that I think I can help solve problems in that area as well. People come to me now, and that's where we work. When we address the voice, we're addressing emotion at the same time.
Yeah, that's the thing, is emotional connections at the root of everything. And at least for me, I know it wasn't always like that. I wouldn't necessarily call myself emotionally stupid when I was growing up, but definitely I was definitely not emotionally intelligent, and it was a skill that I had to learn brick by brick, whether it is from books, from social interactions, Toastmasters as well. And then you get to figure out the difference between, what's rawness? How can you be vulnerable? When are you being too vulnerable? And accepting boundaries of other people. And there are times when we can experience real raw emotions, like, again, anger, disgust, shame, fear. And fear is the big one. And I love the question now that came in from Christina, like, have you ever experienced fear when making a change? If yes, what did you do with it? And I think fear is one of those pervasive, like, all prevailing emotions that can really, really limit us. I mean, some people even say that there's only two emotions, love and fear. Those are the two basic emotions. But I guess, like, a personal question, like, have you ever experienced fear when making a change? And if yes, what did you do about it? What did you do with it?
Yeah, and honestly, Christina, it's a great question. I feel fear on a daily basis. I think none of us are real if we don't feel fear. Part of it is understanding that, like butterflies in the stomach, when you feel it, what do you do with it? Do you interpret it from fear or love, as you said, Alex? And I think that's really crucial as well. We all have fear moments. I had several of them this week, moments of anxiety, and that takes you towards fear. Moments of wondering, what am I doing and how am I doing it? So it's not all roses, and we need to feel fear in order to feel love. We need to feel anger in order to feel joy. And so the really interesting part, and this comes from the Wellness Breakthrough Academy, is understanding that this polarity exists, and it's through the polarity that we're then able to go from one to the other. We don't jump from one to the other. It's kind of like a spiraling to the next, but it will go back and forth. Our goal in life shouldn't be happiness, because happiness is fleeting. And fear often comes when the survival brain kicks in. So that's the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which is a new one I've heard about recently through Instagram, of all places. The holistic psychologist talks about fawn, which is our delaying. We do what people want in order to delay other feelings. And so we're not actually listening to ourselves, or we freeze up, or we want to fight, or we want to get out of there. And so the point here is that those are all fear-based responses. And so when you feel that, one thing that you can take from 6 seconds is the 6 seconds pause. Every emotion that we feel is a chemical, and it lasts around 6 seconds. Just that one small little chain. Boom, gone. Now, they can cascade and we can have more and more, which is why we get more angry. But if at some point we're able to stop that, then it will subside after about 6 seconds. And it's not so much just, take a break. And, mom and dad, someone used to say, just count backwards from 10. No. what you need to think about is in moments of fear, sometimes it can go from fear towards emotional hijack. That's where your brain's completely overwhelmed and you're not able to do anything. You shouldn't be driving a car or operating heavy machinery at that point. What you can do is during that 6 seconds pause is do something like count backwards by 6 from 42. And your brain's got to go, oh, okay, 6 sevens are 42, 6 sixes are 36. And then you start counting backwards. Yeah, you've got to do the math. So what you're doing, if you think of this as your brain, you've got your limbic system here. If you're in a hijack moment, the cortical, the neocortex is not talking to the limbic system. So by bringing back the maths, by thinking of the countries of the world you want to visit or doing something like this, you're bringing the connection back between the cortex and the limbic system in the brainstem. And so that's partly what we can do with that fear, but also acknowledge it. Okay, I feel fear. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question. Have you ever experienced fear when making a change? Absolutely. When we moved to Europe, we had a 6-month visa. We had a desire to make it work as a family. We wanted to stay here in Europe for the long haul. Now we're permanent residents of Austria, and we're very grateful for that. We've learnt German, we've got roles, we pay tax, we're here in the system, we're enjoying our life here. And that's been something that we've wanted. But when we first got here, we had no way forward necessarily. We didn't know if it was going to work. So we need to use that, journal that, and then see if we can channel that into then finding a way forward. And in coaching, we often talk about just take the next step. There's a lovely line in Frozen 2. So my kids are young enough that I'm still watching a lot of Disney films, and I love the line that Anna says, "Just do the next right thing." So Christina, if that helps you, just do the next right thing. When you feel a sense of fear, just take a moment and think, okay, I'll just do this. And then that will shift. And that shift could be the shift that takes you in the direction that you want. When I sat with my friend Eddie in 2013 and I wanted to do something else, I just shifted a little bit towards coaching. And look where I am now. I've brought it into my life. I've utilized it and I've transitioned into it. And I feel that I'm drawn to this spiritually and in this world that we're living in.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful story, and it reminds me of something that I've heard many times before: the next right indicative action. So where are we being guided to? And sometimes it's a little action. I mean, you spent 6 months like where you're in Europe. You didn't know if you would stay or not. It's just a short-term visa, before moving on to a longer-term visa and becoming a permanent resident. But another thing that you pointed out that I think is really important is you were listening to yourself. And we were talking earlier about another book, Julian Treasure's How to Be Heard. And he talked about the lost art of listening. So how can we become better listeners, and how can our viewers become better listeners?
Yeah, I really think in coaching they talk about active listening, and if you break anything down into the smallest habit, active listening is essentially quietening your brain, quietening your ego while you're listening to somebody else. So when I'm coaching somebody, I'm not thinking about giving them some wisdom. I'm not thinking about anything else other than focusing on that person and what are they saying, and writing notes and being truly active in that moment. And then wait 3 seconds. That amount of time. It can feel awkward, but it's like the pregnant pause, I think they call it, or the long pause in speaking, that you wait and you allow the silence. Because sometimes in the silence, people want to say more or they have their own aha. So listening truly is about getting yourself out of the way and just being there and imagining. This is where you can bring in empathy and imagining yourself in the shoes of others for a while. Not trying to offer sympathy, not trying to one up them. Oh, yeah, I had that same experience. I don't care. That person doesn't care about your story. They want to be heard. And that's that idea that only when people are feeling heard will they then truly listen to you. So you listen to others in order for them eventually to listen back to you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, people want to be heard, and that pregnant pause can sometimes feel like it's the longest pause in the history of time. but it's not. People want to be heard, and you can only like sound always comes out of silence, so you can only be heard from that silence. If it's like just chat, it's not going to happen, is it? And
No.
it's not resonant. And another thing about how to be heard, there's an entire chapter on your vocal toolbox. So what can we do? Like we only have 5 minutes left, but what's a quick tip that we can do to make our own voices more resonant?
Something I was thinking about this morning is when I was working with these new singers, these burgeoning singers, was really about when we speak, making sure that we're able to allow the sound to come out. So in Australia, many people speak up here and it's a little bit more nasal. And if you were to pinch your nose at the same time as speaking, you would find that the sound quality changes. So I think in order to be really heard, you could try to make sure that when you speak like this and you're speaking louder, or if you're singing, ah, rather than ah, and you're making a different sound. So, I have a whole range of singing exercises that I work with singers and speakers and all sorts of people on, but it's really about then being able to come from that space where the sound comes out of your mouth and projecting that sound. But honestly, I mean, it's a lot more than 5 minutes to get to the bottom of that. The other thing I would say is that everyone needs to learn how to breathe. We take 23,000 breaths a day, but even Julian talks about it in that book, How to Be Heard. And most vocal coaches will say it, and yoga teachers, Tai Chi, meditation, all of it. Everyone says it all comes back to your breath. And effective pauses is effective breath management. Effective speaking is effective breath management. Whether we sound high or low, whichever way we go, we want to bring that sense of breath. So when I'm working with people, I'm really looking at what's happening with their breath. How can we fix that? Not fix, but how can we alter that to bring awareness, intention, and purpose? Awareness of, is the breath in the belly? When you breathe in through your nose, you achieve that. And then intention, well, what am I going to do with my breath? I'm going to make it sound nice and resonant without the nasal sound. Tied into my purpose, what am I trying to achieve? What do I want to make the other person feel in order to feel something? What do I need to do with my breath in order to bring about that? We can breathe energetically. We can breathe with relaxation. We can breathe in all sorts of different ways. So I think that's a pretty critical thing for people to remember.
Yeah, I mean, and it ties back into the emotion, the feeling. How can we use our breath to, affect what people are feeling, what the emotions are? And yeah, this has been a really powerful interview. So I want to circle back for the final question to something, just a quote from the 5 a.m. Club, which is, we can be legendary instead of living an ordinary life. And you've shown throughout this interview you just have such a legendary life. I mean, whether it's like being a father of 2 amazing kids, opera singer to person. I mean, there's so much that we've spoken about, so I'm not going to repeat it. But how can we become legendary instead of living an ordinary life, David?
Good question. And you know what? I don't like that word legendary. So when he wrote that in the book, it wasn't my favorite line. But I think what he's getting at is living a life of authenticity. And that's a word thrown around a lot. So whether you're a legend, whether you're authentic, it's living the life that you feel tapped into, the inside out approach that your whole podcast is about, to really understand what's in here that you can share out there. So I think it's really doing the inner work, doing the personal work, sitting with yourself regularly every day if you can, and taking that time for you. I started the 5 a.m. idea because, with a busy lifestyle, with family, with kids, you otherwise don't get time for yourself. And at 9 o'clock at night, you're already tired. You're ready for bed. That's the shutdown time. That's the other end of the routine cycle that he talks about in the book. So you set yourself up for success, to be authentic and to be legendary, I think, by really realizing and taking that time for you each day if you can. Even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes, 90 minutes is ideal. And his book has a whole formula, but find your way. Find what makes you resonate and find what makes you feel tapped into your source, to your energy, to what makes you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, that 5 minutes of inner work can have so many outer consequences. And David, I just want to thank you very much for being part of this show, for being part of Inside Out Insights and sharing your insights with us and our viewers.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. And thank you very much, everyone. Next week, we're going to be having an interview with Diana Robertson. So hopefully you guys can all tune in for that. It's going to be next week, Saturday, 5 p.m. UK time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So take care, everyone.